strange. I did not see that coming. Boom. Okay. Now we're going. I was just talking to myself. All right. Yo, can you guys hear me? I think the mic was just, for some reason, you know, there's always one random thing in the program I use that gets changed. All right. If it's your first time here, then you might want to fast forward a minute. We're going to hang for a sec, let people come in, and then we'll do this thing. And if it's not your first time here, you know that I have to go to YouTube, pull up my own link for my own show, post it on Twitter. A little old school, but I kind of like it. Oh, the URL for the video perfectly fit in the tweet. I'm not even going to proofread it. I'm sick of tweeting on the air. Boom. Let's see, where's the chat? Got the chat up. What's up, everybody? I'm glad you guys are here. Let's see, what else do I need to do? I'm going to send this out on Telegram. I am on Telegram. I got on it when everyone was getting banned from Twitter, but it is pretty convenient, honestly, because I probably mentioned it before, but I mostly got on there because I saw the way Jay Dyer uses it, and he basically just sends out anything you wouldn't want to miss onto his Telegram, and it's actually pretty tight. So it's like I get texts. They're not actually texts, but I get the notifications. So it's kind of cool. So I'll just be somewhere and it'll be like, yo, I'm doing this video. It's kind of cool. So I thought I could do that. And that's what I do now. So I am just pasting that on there. I thought about posting this on Instagram also, but I'm not going to. Instagram is the forgotten stepchild of my social media presence. I literally just forget about it for like weeks at a time. You'd think it would be the number one because I do images and make art, but it's really not. It's the most neglected, there's my hand, by far. But what are you going to do? I can only make so much happen. Let's see who's here. Everyone's here. All the important people are here already. How's it going, guys? It's been a pretty crazy week for me. It's been a pretty crazy week. I'm just going to organize my paints. We'll do true pre-show style. I'm going to organize my paints while I get this going. This is look, I have painting teachers that would literally hit me with a stick if they saw this. Although that would be hypocritical because this is what their setups kind of look like anyway. This is a picture. It's an icon. I guess it's technically an icon, but I knew this girl that went to Bulgaria, and she brought that back for me, and it's funny because I love Bulgaria. I've been there myself. She was in Eastern Europe. She wasn't in Bulgaria. And since then, I've had it up above the door in the studio. And I got it way before I even ever thought about becoming Christian, so it's kind of cool. It's a little artifact from my old life, foreshadowing days. What's going on with me, though? Normally in the pre-show we talk about me a little bit, I guess. I've just been doing house stuff, man. I'm getting ready to move, and I live out here in like a rural environment. This is kind of funny. So I live in this rural environment, right? It's not really rural. I'm not in the middle of nowhere, but rural. And you know, I'm like, okay, I gotta make things happen. I gotta get the house cleaned. I gotta get the house painted. I could paint it myself, but I have this medical thing where I don't really want to be around too many paint fumes. Also, I'm really busy, and my wife is pregnant. I don't want her around paint fumes, so maybe I'll just pull the trigger and get it painted, you know, professionally. And house cleaning, I want someone to come clean the house again, like I could do it, but I mean, I would just pay someone a little bit to do it. So anyway, the point is that I've called all these people for all these various things. I gotta fix this random thing in the basement, you know? And like, literally no one has answered their phone. I must have called like 20 different people for all these different things, like fixing this beam in the house and all this stuff. And it's just funny because like, I guess subconsciously I'm used to like city life in a way. But at a certain point, I'm like, dog, someone's gotta answer their phone. I feel like I'm getting like gang stalked, like there's some conspiracy, like, okay, when Owen calls, no one answer the phone. Like I'm getting phone blocked by the Illuminati or something. So I've been doing that. I was at that house today fixing up something in the basement. A little bit of Hank Hill mode, you know, just fixing things up a little bit. Let's see what else is going on with me. Otherwise, I've been reading a lot, which is kind of surprising. Normally I don't have time to read, but I've been getting hit with like insomnia, and I've been stuck at the house waiting for people. You know, I've had a lot of like liminal time, I guess you could say, time in between time where I can't be in the studio. So I've been reading a bunch. We'll talk about that a little bit. Actually, we'll just talk about it now. I've been, if you missed the last stream or missed the last few streams, been hitting the 1800s Christianity stuff, and I unexpectedly got really far into the Book of Mormon, and I'm just going to finish it now. I am on page 320 out of 520. I never thought I would just go for it, but with the insomnia and being up late, I got to page like 150 or 200, and I don't know how you guys are with reading, but for me, I guess my mind isn't very like temporal because I'm a painter and I work with information and, you know, theology principles are eternal. Everything I work with is very like static and eternal in a way. So when I'm reading a book, even if it's a novel or something, which I haven't done in a really long time, but I have to just sit down and power through it, because if I look away, you know, if I go away for a week or two and then I come back, I don't remember anything about where I left off. I read this book by Robert Anton Wilson, the Illuminatus trilogy, and I had to just power through it. It's a huge book. Some of you guys probably know this book. It's a crazy book, actually. I really enjoyed reading it. But it's massive. So this is a long time ago. I had some medical stuff going on, and I was like, I kind of want to distract myself. I started reading this, and I got about here, and the book is so convoluted with all these different interlocking situations and people. I got about here, and I thought to myself, wow, if I put this down for more than a day, I'm never going to be able to pick this up again, because I'm not going to remember who all these people are and how they're intertwined and everything. This is an interesting book. We can talk about this if you want. I posted about it a little bit when I was reading it sometime last year. So anyway, I'm at that point with the Book of Mormon now. I kind of just want to be done with it. Not that it's not enjoyable, but I want to keep going in my studies. So I'm kind of just trying to like power through it at times where I can't work. But I am actually really enjoying it a lot, to be totally honest with you. It's a very strange book on multiple levels in terms of what it purports to be. That's obvious, but then reading the book itself is really interesting. I don't know if you guys know, but the main setting, we'll talk like this for just a few minutes, and then we'll get going on the show, because I want people to just come in. It's almost 7:05 though. I'll pull the trigger in a second. The kind of interesting thing though about it is that I didn't know this. I guess the main what's the word I'm looking for? Contestant, the main suspect for the place where the Book of Mormon is set is in Mesoamerica, which I didn't know that. You know, people always joke about it, and you imagine it's somewhere in America, like the USA. But as you're reading it, it becomes obvious, because they talk about, you know, like sort of like an isthmus, and then there's like a big chunk of land, and there's a sea on both sides, and all this wilderness. That even when I was reading it, I was like, oh, this isn't in like, you know, Kentucky or Idaho or something. This is obviously in some kind of place like that. So that's just an extra layer of bizarreness as I'm going through it, and you're imagining this kind of like semi-quasi like bizarro Bible DLC content, but it's set in Mesoamerica, and then all of a sudden you're kind of imagining these people in like loincloths, I guess, like maybe they're a little Aztec-y or something. It's been a really good time reading that. We'll probably talk about it a little bit. But it's time. It's 7:05. It's 7:06. It is time for the art session. Are you ready? I'm ready. I'm pretty amped. I ate a whole pineapple right before this, so the sugar is coursing through my veins, and I'm ready to go. All right. What's going on, guys? I'm doing great. You were just here. I always feel like it's like, oh, now we really start the show, but obviously you were just here a second ago. But I'm doing great, man. I hope you guys are doing well also. Things have been going pretty normal in the studio. I've just been kind of stressed about making things happen work-wise. I'm kind of accepting, this is the long-term meta-narrative of the show, but I'm slowly accepting that I'm not a machine who can just generate art within these set confines every single day and every single week perfectly. I'm accepting that I live in like this terrestrial plane wherein things come in and out of my life and it's not like machine life all the time. I'm accepting it slowly. Very slowly. So I'm kind of stressed about making things happen like the book and next batch of t-shirts and everything like that, but I can't really complain. If that's the biggest problem that I have, making Patreon posts happen every week on time, if that's the biggest issue I have, I can't really complain too much. So I hope things are going well on your end. It is the last Tuesday of the month. I didn't know that, actually. It's funny. I was sitting at my table. So when I wake up, so I take what I do pretty seriously. You know, I take it sincerely, I should say. I should take it very sincerely. It's different than taking it seriously. But I do take it seriously also. So last night, pretty much every Monday night, every Monday morning, I start thinking about what the show is going to be about. I start thinking how I'm going to deliver for the people. Then I wake up Tuesday and it's like crunch time because I only have a set number of hours before, boom, I'm here on the show with you guys. So I had to go over to the other house this morning, the house. I'm not rich enough to have two houses. And I was thinking, all right, what am I going to do? And I'm congealing the ideas. I'm letting things simmer in the cauldron. And I was like, oh, perfect. I have something on deck. This is great. We'll get back later to the studio. I'll plan it all out. And then I was sitting at my table about 2 hours ago, planning it out. I got the notebook. I'm like writing things out. I'm like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I realized it's the last Tuesday of the month, which means that I don't need to prep anything. So I didn't need to do any of that. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but I didn't need to do any of that. So if you've never been here before for last week of the month show, basically what that means is I will be making an image from your suggestions in the chat. It's kind of like the call-in show. It's kind of what I call it because I'm a little bit in the chat more, talking to you guys more, which is fun for me. I really enjoy that. But it means that we're making an image from your suggestions. So in a minute after I wrap up what I'm going to say right now, that means I'm going to be looking at the chat. If there's nothing there, I'm going to grab a random book off my shelf and just go for it. But it's better if you're suggesting it because you're here, so like, why not, right? So basically what that means is if you want me to see it, sorry I'm handling this really roughly. It has no tag though, that's why it's not on my walls, but I do cherish it. That means I'm going to be looking at the chat, and if you put at Owen Cyclops, it will be orange or red, and I will see it. If you don't do that, that means I won't see it. Someone who's been here before can do that so people can see it. I don't think anyone's done it yet. If you scroll up a little bit, Mustard Pink 83 did it. Someone named Tired Teller did it also. That's how I'll see it, and we'll talk about it and build an image together. It's a pretty good time. So start thinking right now, because if I look and there's nothing there, I'm just going to go rogue, grab a book off the shelf. That's how we're going to do it. Anyway, though, just for a second, just for a quick second, since I was thinking about it, we might as well talk about it. I don't know where my head's going to be next week, so it could be in a totally different plane of existence. But what I was thinking about this week is, like I said, I was reading American Christian stuff, Book of Mormon, and things like that. And I was like, I don't want to do a whole episode about that. It's kind of like a big leap, maybe eventually we'll do one about it, but I don't want to just be totally sucked in there. But it is what's on my mind. And I thought, I've been hearing this verse in the Bible come up in a lot of different places for American Christian stuff, but especially in like the Joseph Smith world. And there's a verse, James 1:5, which basically says, if any of you lack wisdom, ask God, and he'll show you what you should do, basically. That's basically what it is, paraphrasing. And I'd heard it so many times on different lectures and in books I saw it pop up as kind of a, not justifier, but something that was floating in the minds of certain people, but honestly, especially Joseph Smith, for, hey, we're in America, I don't know what church to join in. The Bible says I can just ask God what I should do, so I'm just going to do it. And I thought about that verse, and I thought, I don't know anything about the book of James. I don't know anything about this, literally at all. I should check it out and see it in context. So I was going over here. I'm not going to do a whole academic rundown of it. But it was kind of interesting because I actually had read this before, and I forgot. I think that's kind of a good anecdote to start us out with. Because someone told me, you get the best spiritual advice, honestly, from, frankly, really random people in your life. And someone told me, they said, when you open the Bible and read it, you're reading something that God wrote for you to fit that moment in your life perfectly. I don't know if that's really theologically sound. Maybe there's some folk wisdom there. That's what they told me. And I remembered I actually had read this before. I was about to go back home, where I try and never go, honestly, and see a bunch of my friends I hadn't seen in a really, really, really long time. And the whole context for our relationship was smoking weed and drinking. And I was going back for this guy's wedding. And I was really kind of dreading it. This was a few years ago now. But I was dreading it because I hadn't been back since I stopped smoking or drinking, and I was like, wow, I'm going to be back with like my crew, my guys, but I don't do that anymore, so I feel like I'm kind of a totally different person, and this is like how I bond with them, and maybe this is really superficial, but I'm really dreading it, and I didn't know what to do. I really had a lot of like inner psychic angst about it. I was really dreading it, honestly. It was like keeping me up at night, and I was like, well, I'm going to be there, everyone's going to be drinking, I can't drink with them, like this is terrible. And then I was like, man, this is really ruining the idea of me going back there, you know, this really sucks. It's like, so this whole meta ball, like Katamari Damacy rubber band ball of like, oh my god, all these different things tied together. And I was talking to my wife about it. I don't even think we were married then, actually. We actually weren't. And she doesn't really get it, you know, she's really supportive, but she's never been like, you know, I only drink with people to socialize with them person. So I was sitting in this bed. I remember I was in Colorado. I was sitting in this bed, and I looked over at the desk next to my bed, and I had a Bible there, not this one, a different one. I thought, you know, I'm just going to look in here and see what this says, honestly. So I just opened up to a random page, and this is the page that I opened to. I opened up to James, and it says, straight up, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. And then right over here it says, blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those who love him. And I just read this part and I was like, wow, yeah, true, actually. I should be like thankful that I'm going through this, you know, inner tumultuous process, because I could just be coasting along. And I just closed it and I was like, oh, cool. That was really useful, actually. I just put it down. So it's funny. I came here and I thought I never read this before, but I actually did. I actually just hit that randomly at a certain point in my life. Anyway, though, the other verse I was thinking of here, and then we're going to get started, is it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith, with no doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It just basically says if you feel like you lack wisdom, just ask God. Just ask him. And I thought that was really interesting, you know, especially in the context of my own spiritual wandering, trying to figure things out. It's kind of super obvious, but maybe you need to hear that sometimes. Just like, yeah, you can just ask. You can just ask, bro. I thought that was kind of interesting, and like I said, it popped up in a few of my studies, but we're not going to talk about that too much today. Maybe we will, if you guys want to. But the time has come. That was my little disorganized monologue. I thought it was interesting. I hope you did also. But the time has come for us to start the picture. And like I said, basically the way we do this is I just look in the chat, and if you have suggested anything, I'm going to use it. I try not to censor. Sometimes I grab a symbolism book off the shelf, but I try and just kind of go with the general flow of what you guys are suggesting. I'm not going to grab a book. That was enough books for right now. Let's just do it. So I'm going to go through right now. And if no one suggested anything, then actually I'm going to have to grab a book. All right. Santi G said, Owen Cyclops, first time tuning in live. I think a frog or a duck would be cool. All right, so that's where we're going to start then, bro. I guess I am going to curate a little bit. Let's go with the duck first. We're going to start out with the duck first then. I'm not going to throw down a frame or anything. Part of the interesting thing about doing these episodes with you guys is that normally when I'm struggling to not fall into is the visual trap of just having random little things disorganized. You know, you can imagine if you've seen any of my art before, it's kind of easy to fall into the trap of like, here's a crown, here's a thing, and everything's the same size and just kind of shoved into the same space together. So I try and think about organizing things and sort of the big picture as a whole. So we're going to try and make it a kind of cohesive image woven together rather than just random symbols all together. And a duck was our first suggestion. The other thing is, if you've never been here before, the first thing we got to start with is what line color I'm going to start with. I guess we could start with blue. Blue seems kind of fitting for a duck. Let's start with the ultramarine. We normally never use this color. This is a really dark, warm blue, but for some reason I'm just gravitating towards this right now. I guess if we have no locked-in color scheme, we can think about the season. It's insanely hot here, so summer is in full blast in my mind, even though it might not be literally in full blast. A duck's kind of an interesting one. You said frog or duck. I chose a duck because a duck makes me think of a swan. A swan is a more common symbol in religious art. And sometimes they say what a swan or a duck represents is that it's in the water, right? But it has those special feathers and things just roll off its back. So it sort of comes to represent that aspect of things, that things can just roll off your back. It's almost designed to have that effect. And since the duck is kind of long, I'm going to put it down here because we can have it sort of spilling out into the water and then maybe we'll get some water underneath it. Or we can use its length and have something coming out of the top of it. It's actually sort of a perfect thing to start with. And I'm just going to go for it. I'm not really too worried about it looking like a duck. I'm also going to calibrate just my size a little bit to make sure it's not too big or too small. I'm looking at a giant piece of paper like you are, so I just want to make sure, cool, everything's going to fit. And animals in general that sort of bridge between different, I guess you could say, realms, almost like land, water, sky, things like that. Those are pretty common spiritual symbols. I think man kind of intuitively relates those to transitions, transitory times, and things like that. I was thinking about one of those like mandarin ducks. Those are pretty cool. But I think we're just going to start with like a normal duck. Perfect. Perfect. And this is also good because one of my favorite little drawing things to do, so I'm going to cut it there, that's where it goes in the water, right, is to do this. You can sort of get the look of the water ripples. And it's kind of a nice look because it almost implies that this like infinite space around it like is the water. Like it's in the water a little bit. Maybe I overplayed that a little bit, but it's okay. And I'm also going to come back and just drag the water out a little bit. Perfect. So I'm just going to come around here. Cool. And just pull the blue out a little bit. Nice. The ultramarine is a nice, like, soft blue. And we could get something watery, like, underneath it. That'd be kind of cool. But for now, this is a pretty good start, actually. This is also a really good start because one of my very basic, like, drawing things that I always try and do is make interesting use of, like, silhouettes and shapes. So, like, we could even get something in here. That's why I didn't that's why I didn't make the face in here. Could get something, like, in there. Or even put like a landscape with like a building in here or something like that. So we can kind of take it in any direction. If I miss your message, if I just like don't see it, just say it again because obviously I'm not going to like hardcore, frankly, make sure I don't miss anything. ACTG said, yes, hi, this is my first time, sir. I'd like to say your arms are hairier than I expected. Yes, thank you. Telling everyone that I got my wife pregnant, it's funny. If you've seen that scene in The Simpsons, where Lenny's talking to Homer, and he's like, wow, you're so virile. And Homer's like, thanks, man. It's kind of weird, but thanks. And Lenny's like, I wish I was as virile as you. And Homer's like, okay, change the subject. It's kind of funny. It's like the subtext of a lot of conversations I've been having. Okay, a ferret would be novel. It's kind of weird. Interesting. Yeah, let's do that. I don't know if I'm going to go with a straight ferret, but if we have this white duck, I don't know if it'll be white. We don't have to like leave it white. But there is a creature we can use, actually, which is called an ermine. I don't know if everyone knows what an ermine is, but an ermine is really like a white ferret. There's a really famous Da Vinci painting. It's called Lady with Ermine. In case you've never seen it, it's literally just like a white ferret, so you're not missing out on too much if you haven't seen it. And it's a really famous painting, but it's a really strange creature. And it's in that painting partially to represent like purity. It's this woman's like purity because it's a white animal, but also I think her family seal or crest happened to be an ermine, so it's kind of a cool pairing there. So we'll go with it. Maybe we'll make it white. I can't tell. I'm gonna use a brown outline though. Otherwise, a ferret. Ferret makes me think of a mongoose. I never used like a ferret in my art. I don't really know what one looks like. I get a little bit lucky because I'm using the medieval space of painters making pictures of animals who maybe haven't seen them ever or in a long time. So I'm kind of going to try and get away with that right now. I guess I'm giving it kind of the normal like quadruped head where the eye like comes down. They have like weaselly noses though, right? Kind of like this, right? That's what I would imagine that to be. And then I'm going to guess they have kind of like the spiky hair coming around back. And let's do it this way. I want to put him in like an interesting pose. So I'm going to have the arm coming down here. We'll get the little paw. And then I kind of wanted it to come around this way. I might mess up the shape a little bit, but it's not a big deal. In the very beginning, we have a lot of leeway in terms of like the visual style. So like, if we mess anything up, it's kind of easy to bring it back around. We can make it a little bit more graphic or a little bit more, you know, whatever we need to make it work. Looks like kind of coming up this way. Perfect. And ferrets have tails, right? They definitely do. Boom. 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 Perfect. This kind of animal, they use it in Tibetan art a lot. They use mongooses a lot because a snake is symbolic of different sort of evil, negative forces, kind of like in Christian art. And then a mongoose, as you probably know, eats cobras. It eats snakes. So they use the mongoose in Tibetan art a lot. Outside of that, I don't think I've really seen it that much. We'll have him kind of like sneaking. I want to capture that kind of like sneaky nature of it. It's a little ambiguous what animal this is, but we'll roll with it for a minute. So then we have an ocean animal and a land animal. We'll see where it goes. Ferret would be novel. Let's see. Wanted to ask you this when you tweeted it, but I'm always wondering where you live. Yeah, I don't tell people where I live, sorry. Let's see. Forgot which church do you attend? Undecided at this moment. We can talk about that more later if you want. Can we go ink, painting, texture style in the water? It's such a good texture. Yeah, we will. I'll throw down some like fat chunks of blue. First time here. Questions about anthroposophy. It's a good topic, but I want to dig into painting real quick. Love these videos. Your painting show is the only thing helping me unwind during exam season. Thanks. This is the most positive feedback that I've gotten in the beginning of a show. It's funny. I'm like cruising through. It's like, oh, you're great. Okay. What am I painting now? Thanks. That's really awesome, actually. The male mallard duck. Yeah, we can get some green on the duck. Add a penguin. Okay. Add a penguin. It's really funny. I don't know how to talk about the symbolic nature of a penguin, but I will throw that in. That's interesting. It's a really strange animal. A penguin. Okay, we will do it. You know, it's interesting because sometimes when we do the suggestions, right, people give me things that are outside my, I guess what you could say, like symbolic vocabulary. It's part of why it's interesting. As an artist, you naturally build up like a certain vocabulary of symbols. And then someone will say like, oh, a dinosaur, which doesn't really fit in, which is perfect. It's actually kind of why we do it. A penguin. Well, what I'm thinking is right now, a penguin's kind of a weird animal. You know, we could, my instinct is, you know what we could do? We could kind of put its head up here. I don't know if there's paint on my brush or not. We could come in with the beak up here. And then have the penguin coming down and being like in the background of these guys. I think that would be kind of cool, actually. Let's do it. So we'll have sort of a mashup of animals that we're jumping off from. And I guess if it's a penguin, I have to use black, right? I don't really want to use black, but I guess I kind of have to. You know, we're not going to do that. I'm going to use dioxazine violet. This is the coolest color that I have in the palette. And I'm going to use this instead of black, because I'm just worried the black will be almost like too powerful. So let's see. So I'm going to get some purple out here. I actually punched a hole in this last episode because we couldn't get the cap off. So I'll throw that in penguin. And someone asked me about anthroposophy. It's a really good question. You know, it's really interesting that you asked me that, because I have looked into Steiner quite a bit. In case people don't know, anthroposophy is basically like Rudolf Steiner's, I don't want to call it his like manifestation of Christianity as though he set out to make like a particular form of it, but that basically is what it is, actually. In case people don't know, Rudolf Steiner was this really tripped out, I'm going to give him one of the long beaks, one of the long penguin beaks. It's really like those king penguins, you know what I'm talking about? They have beaks like this, I think. I could pull up a picture of one, but it's more exciting to just kind of keep it moving and just see how it goes here. And they have these little heads, right? They kind of just come up out of nowhere. Perfect. Yeah, that looks good. So Rudolf Steiner, ballpark at early 1900s. And for me, he's basically like all the way on the tail end of the bell curve in terms of being tripped out and into third eye stuff, but also being Christian. He's like as far out as the boat sails, in my opinion. And I checked out his stuff recently, a little while ago actually, because I'd been doing so much theology research, and I thought, how does Rudolf Steiner like intersect with this stuff? It's almost impossible to imagine Steiner talking about like St. Augustine or St. Thomas Aquinas and stuff like that, because it's so rooted in his own, I don't want to say paranormal, but almost like super physical experiences. I could put the dot eye in here, but I'm going to go with sort of a longer eye. I almost put in like the sleepy anime eye, like the U. I really never used that, but I almost did, but I thought it would be a bad call. And how does the color on a penguin work? They have the white bellies, right? Anyway, Rudolf Steiner was hanging out with like the Theosophists, and a lot of his stuff is about like his own sort of like, frankly, like psychic experiences and gaining knowledge of the spiritual realm. I think he describes Anthroposophy as hands-on getting knowledge of the spiritual realm while also being Christian. So for me, I couldn't really do that much with it, because I was like, well, you're an interesting guy, but I'm not like having these weird experiences. And also, it's sort of hard to get a grip on because he draws from so many different things. I bought one of his books. It was actually called Esoteric Christianity, because I thought, okay, well, might as well see what this guy has to say about this, right? But it was all about like Rosicrucians and things like that, things he just kind of gained from his own like visionary experiences. So it's kind of difficult for me to get my feet in there. I want this fade to be way more intense, so I'm going to come in with a way more intense fade. We're going to bring the color back in up there. And the Anthroposophy stuff is interesting. Since I'm having a kid, I have been thinking about Waldorf School. They do it Anthroposophy style there. And it's interesting because without explicitly, that's kind of what I was going for. I wanted more of a fade there, though. Because without educating the kid within any sort of one manifestation of Christianity, it's like Christianity's in the background. But I don't know. I couldn't really get my feet hooked into the Anthroposophy thing because I'm so much so like almost like a systemic theology guy. I think being like an amateur theologian makes me want to ask questions of like, wait, so why is it this way? And what is this? And how do you... So when I open up one of the Steiner books and he's like, the third spiritual realm is called Sanahara, and that is where the spirit goes after death. If I'm like, okay, what square are we starting on here? So I don't really know what it would look like if I did some art incorporating Anthroposophy. I'll think about it. The funnier experience I've had with Anthroposophy is, so I mentioned Waldorf School, and even though I just kind of pitched it as like a really weird, like probably like kind of like a culty sounding like spiritual thing, it's not exactly what it's like. But it's funny because Waldorf schools are really popular. It's actually absurd that they exist because they basically are this really tripped out polymath, crazy smart dude who is also talking to spirits and also happened to be Christian, designed like a cohesive K-12 educational system. And now they're all over the place. It's really cool. But whenever I go to look it up, I find these websites that are like the truth about Waldorf School, and it's trying to show you the bad things, like what they're not going to tell you. And it always makes it sound really awesome. I found this one page where it's like, did you know that Waldorf school teachers actually believe that gnomes exist? And they're going to teach your kid that gnomes are real. And I was like, epic? Hello, epic department? That's like the best part. Again, you're selling me the best part right now. I had all these quotes from Steiner. And it was like, this crazy guy Steiner actually believes that gnomes are real creatures. And I was like, wow, it makes him sound really cool, honestly. Anyway. All right, let's see. Add a penguin. We added the penguin. If you go with the cityscape or something, a train might be cool. Ah, train. Yeah, train's good because that'll get us going horizontal. Do we decide right now what we have going on in the background? Let's pocket the train suggestion for a second, because we are going to get something going on. Once we decide... So part of the show is also the meta sort of creative picture construction aspect, in case you've never been here before. Once we decide what's coming out laterally from here, then we also, as like a secondary like implication decision, have to decide how this is being framed. So, let's say we get the train bars coming out here and I put a little train on here or something. Then how does it end? you know, we can get creative with that decision. Like, we could have it ending with, like, I don't know, I'm just going to make some stuff up, like 2 ladybugs or something. That could, like, tail end the train, right? Or it could be a shape. It could just be a square or something. Or maybe this is all taking place. Maybe we have, like, a big moon. I'm just giving you, like, ideas for, like, you know, things that could happen, because your mind probably thinks of, like, oh, it's a rectangle, right? But there's other options, you know? Or we could have, like, something coming out from the bottom. Like, maybe this comes out down here. There's a big tree, and that's how the railroad ends on the outside. So once we start expanding, it's going to imply the decisions that take place in terms of how the overall picture is framed. So I'm going to pocket that for a second. I'm going to pocket that suggestion. As a child, my spirit animal was a penguin. Nice. Hold on to that. Penguins are pretty cool. Being it's the call-in show, LOL, how do you remain comfortable being in between churches? I've been in a similar spot for the last few years. Had a hard time not letting this I'm assuming you were going to say, affect my face. Nice duck, by the way. I'm watching a swan right now. Nice. Okay, we'll talk about that. King Penguin's got the orange collar, too. Good suggestion. We'll come back in with that, actually. Someone else said King Penguins have the yellow and orange. When we color in these guys, I'll come back in with the other colors. Ibis Penguin. Maybe frame it with trees or branches. Okay, cool. So I'm going to take the reins here a little bit and fan this out a little bit. The question was, how do I stay comfortable being between churches and stuff? Well, it's been interesting. It's honestly pretty annoying, and it's pretty annoying, to be totally honest with you. And I'm going to have to kind of decide what the story is when I have a kid. That's sort of the impetus. I stopped talking about it for a little bit. I don't mind that you asked me, obviously. But just, you know, another sort of meta note for what it's like being on this side of the screen is that C.S. Lewis says, you know, there's kind of this like self-aggrandizing aspect to choosing churches and things. And at first I didn't really feel that, but eventually I did start to feel that, and that's partially why I stopped talking about it online. I didn't want to make it seem like it's like, oh, what church is good enough for me? Who's good enough for Owen Cyclops? Convince me. Like, sell me on your church, you know? And it really does start to feel like that after a while, especially because naturally, you know, if you talk about it online, people are then like, oh, hey, like, you should check out my church, which is really great. But then, you know, you're kind of put in this, like, salesman-y position, like, where you're getting sold something, and it's not really conducive to spiritual humbleness. So that's partially why I stopped talking about it online. But I guess you could say it's really been a part of everything for me, because it's part of my whole thing is like asking questions, I guess, and figuring things out. And it's really been a part of the whole process. I think that actually, I don't know what it's like for other people, but for me personally, it's definitely helped me go deeper into certain topics, because I've been hearing people debate about them or go back and forth on different topics. That's sort of like how I learn, actually. So a lot of what I learned about Christianity, I really learned from watching debates and people arguing and things like that. For me, that's partially how my brain hits like different sides of a topic. I wouldn't really say it's affected my faith too much, to be honest with you. But I also grew up way more like materialist, anti-religion. So in a way, I think it's also been good, because I don't really like the kind of like vitriolic and like lack of understanding that happens between different manifestations or branches of Christianity. So I think it's also kind of nice that not that that doesn't happen automatically when you subscribe to a church, obviously, but sometimes it happens for people. So I don't know. It's kind of annoying, honestly, because I've mentioned this before, but I thought that what would happen is I would be like, oh, this group is obviously correct, but actually I can just see things more and more and more from every perspective, which is actually immensely frustrating. So eventually I'll probably just choose a church that is right for my family and that I want to like send the kid to, honestly. Maybe that's the ultimate lesson of all of it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I was talking in the car with my wife, and we were talking about going to this church near our house, you know? And she was kind of like, I doubt that every single person that goes there, like, literally agrees with every single thing that this, you know, organization or group has ever said ever. You know, it's partially about, like, being around other people and the social aspect of it. And, of course, like, you know, celebrating God and worshiping God together as a community. You know what I mean? And I think for at least me, it's kind of really easy to be like, wait, but what if I disagree with this document that came out in the 1270s where this group said... And it's like, yeah, I mean, is that like the most important thing though? Is it really like the largest factor? Probably not. I'm going to try to get some color coming up in these trees. It's kind of a good opportunity. I'm just going to throw in maybe like a yellow or something even. I'm just going to get like some kind of wild color coming up down from the bottom. So it hasn't really affected my faith. I think that eventually though you do have to, that's another thing C.S. Lewis says. Christianity is like the hallway, and then eventually you do have to go into one of the rooms. That kind of is how it feels. I don't know, man. It's a really interesting question. I try and not make it like a defining aspect of my character that I really enjoy sort of going into the different manifestations of Christianity, but it almost kind of is becoming that. Can't tell if that's good or bad or not. But I'm always learning new things. That's really cool. I listened to some debate. I recently hit a lot of the James White debates. I don't know if people know him, but he's like a Protestant, like hardcore scripture guy. I think he's actually a Calvinist, and he does all these debates, and it's pretty cool because I really like the way he lays out his cases, and then sometimes I agree with the people he's debating, sometimes I agree with him. And he's hit some topics where I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that was a controversy. I didn't even know that people disagreed about that. I was scrolling through the list. I posted about this a while ago. I was scrolling through the list. And there was one like, did Mary remain a virgin for her entire life? And I was like, what? Is that even on the table? Is that even on the table? I didn't even know people didn't agree with that. What? So, I don't know. I'm kind of always learning and always going into new things. Okay. So for the trees up top, I'm just going to throw down this Viridian. We have kind of like a cool color thing going on right now. Viridian is the cool green. Sap green is the warm green. It's going to be really transparent, but I'm just going to go for it. Maybe we can throw down some like fruit on the trees or something. We're going to go with the cedar trees. Maybe we'll do one cedar tree, one the other tree. One like perennial tree. Come down here. Cedar trees usually represent death in artwork, and that's actually how I use them in my own artwork. If you go to Italy, there's cedar trees all around. These graveyards and stuff, and I think the tale generally is that if you cut one down, it doesn't grow back. Someone told me that. And then I said to myself, if you cut down normal trees, do they grow back? I didn't know that. I don't think they do, though, but either way, they represent death in Renaissance artwork, and that's often how I use them. And sometimes what I'll do, I guess what I'm about to do right now, is I'll juxtapose them. So we'll have a cedar tree representing death on one side, and then we'll have, where's the green? Where's the Viridian? We'll have the other kind of tree, a more bushy kind of cloud kind of tree on the other side. So the death tree and the life tree, kind of symbolic of like rebirth in a way. It's really the ultimate Christian pictorial theme, so I try and pump it in as much as I possibly can in varying ways. Thanks for your thoughts on Steiner and Waldorf School. I have no experience with the latter, so I can't speak to that, LOL. But did you know gnomes exist? Yeah, I'm just reading the chat. I feel that for me it's deciding I want to go to a church that's more traditional and aesthetic, or a church that's actually part of my community. I'm pretty much chosen aesthetics right now. Yeah, as an American, it's kind of super annoying, to be honest with you, and I think that's part of why I've been going into the 1800s American Christianity thing, because, it's interesting. Like, on the one hand, like, of course, I guess what you could say, like, theological principles, whatever is true about God and these, like, higher virtues and things like that, whatever's true about that is true regardless of, like, what nation you're a part of, right, obviously. But at the same time, it does feel like the social aspect of it, the way that people are called together and the way that people come together to form like a spiritual body politic is obviously affected by who or what those people are. I think that's true, like, regardless of whatever branch of Christianity or manifestation of it you're a part of. And the American thing is just so interesting because there really is this kind of like contradiction where America is so like anti-authority, don't tell me what to do. So it's interesting seeing how that manifests in religion, right, of all things, right? Just moving the lamp around so we don't get too much of a glare. And we've been talking about it a little bit, but it really has been on my mind because it's really like once America gets started, boom, you really hit the powder keg. you have this perfect confluence of forces where like the Reformation's basically congealed enough that it has like solid stances and players, then it's unleashed in this, literal wilderness across the ocean. And you get a lot of stuff happening. That's part of why I started poking into the Mormonism thing to begin with. I think after the Mormonism stuff, I'm going to hit a few other like fringe manifestations of Christianity. Like I want to hit the Jehovah's Witnesses stuff and things like that. But I was really surprised that it's all rooted in the idea of a what's the term they use? It's really rooted in the idea of a restoration of the early church. I think you can really take most Christian groups and kind of distill them down to like a vector in a way. You can take a manifestation of Christianity and say like, what's the main vector of action here? What's the main like driver here that is the anchor down the horizon that drives, this whole group and says where they're going? You talk to someone who's Catholic, you say, why are you Catholic? They say, it's the one holy universal apostolic church. Boom. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying that's like the vector. The vector is, well, we have the one true holy apostolic church. Boom. There it is, buddy. I guess for Orthodox it's kind of the same thing. With a lot of the Protestant groups, though, the vector of action is we're going to return to what the church originally was. With a lot of the Protestant groups, they're like, again, not to keep repeating myself, the vector of action is, that church you read about in the book of Acts? We're going to do that again. That's kind of like the subtext of it. So I don't know. As an American, it's interesting. It's interesting. Like you said, then there's the aesthetic tension. A lot of the churches around me, they're full of like really, really, really great, awesome people. And I probably agree with them about a lot of stuff. But then their church kind of looks like, a meeting place in like an airport. It looks like a meeting house in like a Holiday Inn that like Tony Robbins would have like a conference in or something. I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just being realistic. And it's kind of intentional, I guess, in a way. It's also the result of certain like socio-historical factors, but it is difficult to wrestle with all that. And then you're like, well, am I going to go to a church just for the aesthetics though? I don't know. That seems kind of weird too. Anyway, let's see. Okay. I'm going to miss some messages here. It's just how it's going to happen. So if I miss your question, just ask me again. Yeah, you can cut down a tree to a stump and they grow back. I actually didn't know that. We need another picture suggestion. Let's see. Any other picture suggestions? No. We just got questions for me, which is very flattering. But that means that I'm going to grab a book off the shelf. We're going to grab, let's see, what are we peeling off the shelf over here? Let's use something we don't normally use. I don't think maybe we use this. Oh, this is a good one too. Okay, we got two books right here. Keep hitting me with suggestions because I guess it's kind of the point right now. But I got two books here that we don't normally use. We've used this one a little bit. Dictionary of Bible Types. That's pretty cool. A type is something in the Old Testament that foreshadows the New Testament or vice versa, in case you don't know. And this one's pretty cool too. It's Dictionary of Signs and Symbols in Christian Art. This one comes as close as possible to being a reverse symbol dictionary, where you can look up justice, let's say, and see what represents justice. It's actually pretty rare. I've always been looking for one of those. So unless there's a new suggestion here, let's see. Maybe a fish under the water. All right, let's do it. We got dangerous. I got dangerously close to a lack of suggestions. A fish is pretty good. A fish is kind of obviously the way to go right here. Let's do it a little bit differently though. We could just put a fish in. Let's see, how could we get creative with that though? Honestly, what I'm thinking is it would be kind of cool. We could have like the fish split in half and something in the middle of the fish. I think that's what we're gonna do. So we'll have like the head over here, and we'll have the cut, and then the tail. Then we could put something in the middle, and then that kind of gives that object some weird mystique. Why is it like that? Why is it in the middle of the fish? The fish is probably the ultimate symbol in my art. I think that's probably the thing that I use more than anything else, really, is the fish. So many layers there. The fish representing Christ in the early Christian church because of the ICTHS, is that it? Jesus Christ, Savior of the world, initialized, spells out fish. and the Christians were persecuted, so they would use the fish as like a crypto symbol. That's obviously pretty cool. I was actually in a church in Italy somewhere, and I was going to put like kind of normal top half of the fish in here. We'll give it the fish mouth. Perfect. And I found this pillar that someone had carved a fish into. It looked pretty ancient. I took a rubbing of it. I took a page of my sketchbook and rubbed it. And rubbed down this like fish graffiti. And I lost it. I don't have that anymore. It's really annoying. But that was pretty cool. And then there's also the fish, you know, dives down deep into the ocean. So it represents the spiritual seeker. The ocean, you know, hidden waters, water, like the depth of the subconscious, but also, you know, the world itself, its hidden aspects. Then water relates to like baptism, you know, the fish goes down deep into the water. And then also fish travel in schools. So it's also like us in a way, like these spiritual seekers together in this body, this unison. So there's a lot going on there. I like this though. I like the cut fish. That's pretty cool. I might even put some blood. Down in the bottom of the fish. Let's just go for it. It's that show where we can kind of just do whatever we want. And you know, I was just thinking, red is going to upset the color scheme a little bit here. So I think we're going to use magenta. We're going to use some kind of sour magenta-y color instead of straight red. I thought the straight red would be too much. And I just have a feeling, maybe because we're in a cool color zone here, the magenta would be solid. Cool. Let's see, there were a bunch of questions, but I missed them. So like I said, if I missed your question, how will your wife feel when you end up joining the Mormon Caliphate? Yeah, dude, tell me about it, man. Tell me about it. Okay, I'm going to wet the area around the outside of the fish, and then I'm going to put it around here. You know, it's funny also, just, you know, I like casually talking with you guys here. I'm normally kind of, not reserved, but I like talking about the meta aspects of what goes on here. And it's funny because anytime I ever look into a new topic, I think people are kind of like, maybe, I don't know why, honestly, but I think part of like the posting online thing, like whenever I look into a new topic, there's like a slew of people who are like, oh, that's it. Owen's gone off the deep end. Now he's going to be like that. Now he's like that guy. And it happened sometime last year when I was looking at like, just briefly looking at like aesthetics for like socialism and like lefty politics and authoritarian regimes. I think I only posted about it like a few times, but I look into random stuff. So I was looking into it, right? I was kind of hoping that would bleed out a little bit more, but it actually looks pretty cool. And someone DM'd me and they were like, oh my God, why are you looking at this? Like, oh my God. And I was like, bro, I'm just checking it out, man. I'm just, you know, I look under every rock I can possibly find. And then anytime I've looked into some new like Christian thing, like I was posting about Pentecostal stuff for a minute because I was doing Pentecostal research, people were DMing me like, don't become Pentecostal. Like, don't do it. Like, bro, I grew up Pentecostal. Like, you really don't want to be Pentecostal. I was like, okay, I was like, bro, I'm not going to become Pentecostal, man. I'm just looking into it. And that's the same thing with the Mormon stuff. Like, people are like, bro, are you becoming Mormon? You're reading the Book of Mormon? Why are you reading it? Why are you reading it? And I'm like, I'm just reading it, bro. I'm just reading it, man. But yeah, not going to join the Mormon Caliphate anytime soon. But maybe. I'm open to it in the sense that I'm open to anything. But I don't see it happening, but I am open to anything. I do have a bunch of books lined up that I'm going to read about it. Man, I really wanted this to like fuzz out just a little bit more. It looks cool. That's exactly the effect I wanted right there. That actually is the effect that I wanted. I do feel like there is something like intrinsically American about it that I really want to understand. And also that with the Seventh-day Adventist stuff has really opened up a lot of interesting theological questions for me. You know, like with the Seventh-day Adventist stuff especially, it's like, well, why wouldn't God have prophets now? Why wouldn't God have people he speaks through now? And it's kind of these interesting questions that, you know, you're laying awake in bed at night and you're like, well, yeah, I guess, you know, why wouldn't that be the case? Maybe there is a reason that I'm unaware of. Okay. Maybe a nail between the fish. Yeah, that's tight. Let's do that. That's a really good idea. Okay, we're just going to do that. Don't even need any more input. What color am I throwing down this nail in, though? That's a really good question. Really, this would be perfect. I have this Venetian red, but it's almost empty. But let's see. Maybe we can dig it out here. A nail's pretty solid because obviously that has Christian symbolism, obviously. But it's a little discreet. Maybe if you're here, it's not discreet. Maybe if you're here, it's obvious. But I think outside the sphere, it's a little discreet. Construction, maybe it represents building. But it's like the passion, I guess, in a way. Be interesting because maybe, this picture always kind of becomes about something eventually. But I have been thinking about the fall recently a lot. And getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden and all that stuff. So if we start getting some like resurrection-y, atonement-y symbols, maybe that's kind of what the picture will become about. Like we have like nature world, the whole terrestrial world out here, and that also fell as a result of the fall with man, because man is the steward of nature, right? So it could be kind of an interesting pictorial space to step into. That's one of the most interesting theological distinctions I think that I found in my whole journeying, honestly. Was going to oversimplify it. But that in Orthodoxy, the fall created death. That death wasn't supposed to exist. So death is unnatural. And we're not supposed to have death in the world. Whereas if you take a more, what's the word I'm looking for? Natural theology, is that the term? If you take a more Western approach, then that's not really the case, I think. I think it's that the natural world is supposed to have death, and you can like reason things about the natural world by observing it. But in Orthodoxy, it's like the natural world has this, trying really hard not to use a curse word, it has this F up in it, it has this mistake, it has this glitch in it, which is death. I think about that a lot. I think that's really interesting. I can't really tell where I fall on that one, but I do think it's really interesting. That looks awesome. This looks really, really tight in here. And it's going to look tighter when I pull out the blue into the fish, which I'm going to do right now. This is a low-key, really solid color scheme. But for some reason, copper and cerulean blue look so good together. Copper and blue in general. In fact, if you even get the metallic paint and get that copper going with blue, looks so good. Looks so good. I have no idea why. Someone posted some pictures of some big Russian church. I think it was actually like the official military church in Russia or something. And they had this big image of Mary. And the color scheme was like blue and copper. I think she had like a big copper halo. Oh, dude, this looks great. She had a big copper halo and then the blue of her outfit. It's just a good combo. I don't really know why. Something about the rusty red with the blue. It's just solid. It's just a solid combo. Yeah, that's perfect. The little dab in there is perfect. Have you ever gone fishing? Dude, yeah. Hell yeah, dude. I love fishing. Yeah, dude. This has some Inuit vibes going on. That magenta blood looks so dope. A loose or unused halo inside the fish. Yeah, well, I'm going to port your suggestion over because I'm going to use that idea behind the nail either way. A little bit of an option here if we want to go with the cool yellow or the warm yellow. I'm keeping it cool. I think we're going to strategically drop in some warm colors at the end. But for now, I really am vibing on the cool colors. You can actually see, even though it might be small if you're watching on a small screen, you can see the difference anyway. See this yellow over here? This is the cool yellow. It's lemon yellow. It is literally the color of a lemon if you go to the supermarket and see a lemon. And this, the warm yellow, you can see obviously it's way warmer. It's like the school bus color. So I just like pointing that out because if you haven't ever trained yourself to see colors in a certain way, that's a really good one to start with in terms of seeing temperature. You know, you can really easily see the color, the temperature difference between different yellows. Even a highlighter is almost like a hyper cool yellow in a way. And then if you look at like a pencil, like a number 2 pencil or something, that's more of like a warm yellow. And if you watch the show a lot, if you're not a color person, you should train yourself to start seeing the temperature of colors. That is a nice advanced thing. Anyone can do the hue, saturation, value, how light or dark it is, how intense the color is, and all that stuff. But when you start thinking about temperature, that's really where you reached a new level, in my opinion. Perfect. Let's come up here. Yeah, it looks good. I'm going to leave that unfinished. Looks good. And we'll get the yellow up here somewhere also. No suggestions. Everyone's talking to each other. That's totally cool with me. I love the idea of community, friends talking, but it doesn't help me with the pictures. Let's dive in here. Let's see what's going to come out of here right now. A dictionary of Bible types. I'm just going to open to a random page. And we'll lock it in. We will use something on this page no matter what. No matter what, we're going to use something on this page. Wow, I opened up to sign. That doesn't really help. Okay, no matter what, we're going to use something that's on, and that's all that's on here is just the term sign. All right, let's see. We're definitely going to use 100% something on this page. Oh, here we go. Okay, what do we got going on here? Ring. That's pretty cool. Ripe. It's kind of hard to paint, but okay. And river. Oh, that's pretty cool, actually. That's interesting. I don't know. Let's see what it says about ring. Ring. Song of Solomon. This is a type, and just again, in case people don't know, type means like reference almost. It means maybe you don't know anything about the Bible. You're watching this. In Genesis, Joseph, everyone turns on him, and a lot of bad stuff happens to him, but then ultimately it turns into a good thing. He's like a type for Jesus. It's like a parallel is the word I'm looking for. So that's what a type is, just so you know as we're reading this. It's like a parallel, basically, between the two testaments. Ring, Song of Solomon. This is a type of the pure and perfect care which our Lord exercises over his bride because of the intimate relationship between them. It tells of eternal devotion which will never be broken. It tells of divine care which is always sufficient. It tells of the beautiful love that is indescribable and constant without end. Huh, that's interesting. That's interesting kind of in terms. There's other definitions too, but that one was good, so I'm just going to kind of move on from that. That's interesting because if we're building up to a kind of like nature fell, but God does love nature and created the natural world, so we're going to go with that. We're going to go with that ring. Ring is, the description was actually kind of perfect. The only question here is how we're going to throw that in right now. Could put it over here, but then we're going to upset the balance because if whatever we put here, there's not as much room over here. So if I put a whole big ring over here, something here is going to be smaller. All of a sudden we're going to shatter the balance of the picture. Could put a ring around the penguin's head. That actually would be pretty cool, honestly. Oh, you know what we're going to do? I got it just now, actually. We're going to put it laterally, like a little bit slightly 3D style, above the penguin's head. And that'll be perfect because we can make it almost the same color as the nail. I imagine, I don't know what verse it's talking about in Song of Solomon there, but imagine a metal brass ring isn't too off the mark. Maybe we'll bring the tree color up here, and then we'll get the browns in this nice kind of periphery on the outside. It's also something else you can do when you're making a picture. Sometimes you can isolate the colors and just see how the colors are functioning on their own. So we'll have the browns all around the outside like that. That'll be it's a nice way you can also start like thinking about composition and things like that. And I'm not even going to take more paint out. I'm just going to grab it off right here. I don't want it to be the exact same darkness. Technically, I should use the word value. Value is darkness here. I don't want it to be the same level of dark as the nail. I'd actually like it to be a little bit lighter. So get a little dynamism, dynamicness going on in terms of the colors. And I'm just going to go for it here. It's like a ring above its head. It's going to kind of imply a halo. Sometimes I draw halos like this later in art. But we'll know it's a metal ring. And maybe that also fits the theme of the picture in a way. God made the world and then it got a little messed up, I guess. But then there is that sort of promise of redemption implicit in the whole tale. I could have turned it more so it would look more like a ring. I get it. I'm doing this live, but it'll work. It'll work either way. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get the dark part in here. Perfect. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to fade it up a little bit. I'm going to fade it up. Worst case scenario, it won't be totally clear it's a ring, but I'm gonna come through for you guys. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. That is exactly what I wanted. Perfect. And I'm gonna come back in with the darkness a little bit down here because I just want to really hit that. I want to really feel like you're looking down in there. And you know what else I can do to make sure it looks like a ring is I can do this. I can set a little stone in the ring. That's what I'm going to do. Just going to set this in here. Could have made it blue, but I didn't. Kind of instinctually grabbed the red, I think, because red is sort of like the color for the passion. It's like the symbolic color of the passion. Actually looks pretty cool. And we'll come around here. Perfect. Get the darkness over here. And I'm just going to throw down this dark color and then I'm going to blot it up so I can kind of pick out the highlights that I want. And you know, if I have to paint the stone again, it's not a big deal. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, almost. Pretty good. I'll probably come back in. What I'm going to have to do is this line right here is why it's not working. You see this lighter line? That's why it's not working. That line needs to be this level of darkness. So what I'm going to do is just kind of let this dry. And then I'll come back in. Maybe I can get away with it right now. I really should wait until it's dry. But I'm not going to. Just come up here. Cool. Yeah, that actually looks pretty cool. Kind of lean into like the roughness of it. Almost. Almost. Cool. Okay, I'm going to let this dry and then come back and bring that brown color in. I keep saying I'm going to walk away, but I can't. I literally cannot walk away. Okay, that looks a little better. And I'm just going to get the rim. I just can't stop. I have to get the rim up here. Perfect. Okay, I could deal with that. Just come up here, get the rim on the top of the ring. Oh my god, I erased the dark line and now I'm right back where I freaking started. It's okay though. Okay. I have to let it go. I have to just wait until it's dry and then I can fix it, but I can't stop. I literally can't stop. Okay, I'm walking away for a second. Cool. Okay. It looks pretty cool picture-wise. Worst case scenario, if we get to the end and we're like, man, that really doesn't look like a ring, I could make this a stump with like the roots coming down. That actually would be pretty cool because then it's like the living trees and the dead tree, but I would like it to be a ring. But we're just going to leave it for right now. Let's see. Any other suggestions? Draw a ripe apple. Yeah, that sounds pretty tight actually. Let's get that in there. I'm going to take your ripe apple suggestion. Okay. Yeah, it's a big suggestion because we want to start thinking about what's going on with this guy in the center. One thing that we want to think about with the picture is contrast. Contrast is king in this kind of situation. And right now, most of the contrast is here, and that kind of makes this guy like the main character in a way. I instinctually feel like we could put the apple in here, and it's like in this ferret. He's kind of like the sneaky creature. Kind of makes sense in an abstract way. So we could put the apple in here, and then maybe we could just shade up lightly the brown behind him. Sounds kind of good actually, and I'm feeling like the red of the apple would look good in this ferret. So let's just see. Let's just go for it. I was actually talking before with someone about how the tree in the Garden of Eden could have had, the fruit on the tree could have been pomegranates instead of an apple. But it doesn't really work as well, right? It doesn't really sound as good. If you imagine Eve like having to peel this pomegranate and like get the seeds out and everything. It's almost like a bit. Like the snake finally convinces her to do it and then she's like cracking the pomegranate open. Just like getting the seeds everywhere. And the snake's like, no, that's not how you do it. You have to do it in a bowl. You're spilling the seeds everywhere. Okay, let's throw this in here. Perfect. And I have been thinking about the fall a lot recently, so maybe it's good that we tended in this direction. Mostly because I got kind of, I guess you could say, blindsided by the interesting fact that in the Book of Mormon it says the fall is a good thing, and the fall is like something God planned. And I thought that was really interesting. And I want to go back and go into some church father stuff and see how much that is the case. By the shading looks really good, but I'm totally going to ruin it and try and make it better. I really should just leave it because it looks nice and sophisticated. I'm going to do it. I'm going to leave it. Because I want to see how much, in sort of the original church father stuff, how much the fall being this like tragic event is like actually the case versus it being, I don't want to say like a folk thing, but like a more something that develops over time, if you know what I mean. Like in a way, without the fall, like none of this other stuff could have happened, so it's bad, but also, I don't know, would it have been better for us to just be like chilling in the Garden of Eden forever? I guess so, but then that's impossible, because then wouldn't that make the whole atonement situation unnecessary? So obviously we had to go through the fall. It's one of those weird issues where time and human free will intersects with the mind of God in a way that is kind of unintuitive. Man, that looks good. That looks really good. I'm surprised looking at my own painting. Hey, that looks good. But I have been thinking about it a lot recently. I don't know if it's like blasphemous or not to say that God planned the fall. I guess that is, because that takes the human free will out of the situation. So obviously it would be. But it is interesting, man. That's like one of the ultimate theological questions. We talked about that on the show a few weeks ago, but like how human free will intersects with the mind of God. You really can't figure that one out. It's endlessly frustrating. That's where the Calvinists are just like laughing in the background. In case people don't know, Calvinism is famously very pro the idea of predestination. They would say it's just one aspect of their theology that people kind of obsessively focus on from the outside, but I mean, it's kind of what they're known for, I guess you could say. Predestination being one way to logically reason out what I just mentioned. Well, God knows everything, so he knows what you're going to do, so it's kind of like you're predestined to do it. But then, of course, a lot of other people really lose it at that, because it kind of sounds like you're taking free will out of the equation then, doesn't it? Which is impossible. Boom. Sometimes I think a lot of the theological, we talked about different churches and stuff. Sometimes I feel like a lot of the theological differences are more based on people choosing to put certain issues at the forefront rather than actual like disagreements. Like you could very easily just take that question and say, well, it doesn't matter, we're never going to know, and just put it on the back burner. In a way, I feel like that's what I get from certain Orthodox writing. I doubt that's like the full-on position, but I feel like they're a lot more willing to say, well, it's like a divine mystery, basically, to oversimplify. Not that I'm an expert, but that's what I pick up from the outside. Whereas then you get guys like Calvin, maybe certain older theologians. I know Augustine talked about predestination a little bit, where they're like, no, we're going to figure it out. Man, I really like how this looks. I really like how what I just did looks really sophisticated there. That's tight. This is really tight. So this is also part of why we do the kind of like sketchy painting stuff, where we're kind of feeling it out a little bit. Part of the reason why I wanted to do the show initially, way in the beginning, was I think people imagine that artists like always land it every time. Maybe they do. What just happened is kind of a perfect example of what doing art alone in your studio really is like, because I painted this ring and like I'm totally cool with it. Doesn't really look that good. I'm okay admitting that to you guys. Doesn't really look like a ring at all. But then next minute, you kind of land something else and you're like, oh wow, the shading here, this looks really sophisticated, So it's kind of interesting, going through it. Once you take off the reins of everything having to be perfect, a lot of interesting things can happen. It's kind of the point, I guess. The fruit could have really been a banana for all we know, but Westerners love the symbolism of an apple. That's true. Did you know ancient Israelites believed in 3 falls? No, that sounds pretty crazy and interesting, though. There's actually a recent Catholic scholar who claimed that Christ would have incarnated even if we hadn't bit the apple. Yeah, a lot of Western, like scholastic theology gets into these weird situations of like, well, you know, what if this happened? Would Christ still have, you know, it's kind of interesting, a little bit superfluous, but of course it's really interesting for me. Let's see, we need another suggestion. Santi G is killing the suggestions right now. I feel like I recognize that name from Patreon. If so, thanks. If not, you're still killing it on the suggestions. You could put something in the two spaces between the penguin's head and the trees. A flower or a fruit like a pear, maybe. Yeah, between the penguin's head and the trees. You guys can ask more questions if you want, or anything else that we should talk about. Let's see. Yeah, we need something in between here. I'm going to pause that space for a second, just because I don't want to get too cluttery. I want to see where we're going in terms of like picture density. Iron Grid asked a good question. What time of day is this painting? Sunrise, sunset, etc. Well, you know, if I'm in charge, it's obviously going to be sunrise or sunset, obviously. Let's get that in the mix, because that'll flesh out a lot of these problems. So I'm just going to take water and wet up all these fibers up in here, and then we'll throw in the fades, and we'll just kind of see what happens right now. Okay. Let's see, I'll make sure this brush has no paint on it. Cool, perfect. And you can't see what I'm doing probably unless the light is reflecting off of it, but I'm just going to throw down the water here to wet this, so when we come in with the colors, we can get the fades going. I might even use this brush and just come in with like big washes of color. And I'm even going to come all the way up here, because ideally it'll just kind of flow all the way up. It probably won't, but we'll see how that goes. Perfect, perfect, perfect. What's your favorite species to fish for? You know, it's really interesting, dude. I was just thinking, okay, what should I talk about while I'm doing this wash? In terms of the fishing stuff, it's interesting, man, because I grew up near the ocean, but now I live near lakes. So I'm way more of an ocean guy than a lake guy. So I can go out on the ocean with people and kind of like at least pretend that I know what I'm doing. But in the lakes, I'm literally just faking it. I have no freaking idea what I'm doing in like any capacity. So I couldn't even really say. Since I moved here, I've just literally caught random fish in lakes and stuff like that. Ocean style? I don't know what my favorite would be, man. I kind of just catch whatever people are catching. I'm not that hardcore. I wish I was, though. Okay, let's see. I caught a really big marlin once. That's the most impressive fish I caught. I caught this absolutely insane marlin. Okay, let's see. How do we want to do this fade in the back? I feel like we should just go for it. I feel like maybe yellow into blue is the way to go. I feel like the yellow would be a good call. The paper's drying. We got to make a call. It's either going to be pink or yellow. Let's start with the pink, and then we'll flow it up into yellow. I think that's going to be the move. So I'm just going to come over here. It's a little bit dangerous with all the colors so close to each other, but I'm just going to go for it. And you can never predict how it's going to flow. Sometimes you get that powerful, like insane wash of color that you wanted. Maybe it's the brush. This brush is not designed to hold a lot of paint. This is actually like an acrylic or oil painting brush. Whereas these short-handled brushes, okay, are designed to swell up and hold a lot of paint. Let's see how this goes. I don't know how this is going to go right now. Let's get the yellow in here. We're going to end up with these like bands of color. Come on, mix. We'll take that. We'll take that for now. Okay. And then let's see. I'm going to drop the cool yellow in. Perfect. Glad we have all these colors just ready to go. Drop the cool yellow in here. Nice. And if we could get the cerulean blue on the fade out, that would just be too powerful. I wish this would come out a little bit, just a little bit. Huh. Actually, looks pretty cool. Honestly, it looks pretty cool. It's not exactly what I wanted, but it does look cool. Let me pick this up really quick. Boom. Perfect. Perfect. I'm going to come back in once more with the pink. I just feel like we could get a better look there. I want to really like soak the color in those fibers. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. It's as good as it's going to be. Actually looks pretty cool. And then I want to get the cerulean blue lightly up at the top. Let's see. I don't want it to be too much though, but it's hard when I'm going so fast. That's perfect. 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 Man, that was awesome. Got a little bit of a rush doing that, I'm not gonna lie. Oh wait, is this a white space in here? I can't even tell. No, it's the animal's leg. Okay. Cool. That was pretty solid actually. Perfect. And I could put in the sun, I guess. Let's just do that while we're here. I don't know how that's going to translate, but I almost want to just put in this like dark magenta sun right here. So I'm just going to do it. It might blur out too much, but I think it would be cool. It'll probably fuzz out a little bit too much, but maybe if it fuzzes out too much, what I'll do is come back in and put like the red in there or something. And also while it's wet, I'm just going to keep pushing it a little bit here. I don't have white out. I should. I'm just going to do it quickly. I want to get the moon out really quick. And no, I've never done fly fishing. I really would like to though. I've never fished in a river ever, just on lakes. It's interesting too because obviously like I'm not playing a character here. I really am always thinking about the symbolic and deeper like meaning of things, and really do feel like the ocean and lake are so different. I'm just gonna come in with the white here. That's pretty cool. You can see it like fuzzing out actually still. Can't really tell it's a moon, but it's okay. I'm gonna put another one over here. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, that was pretty powerful. I gotta move the light somewhere so it's not shiny for a second. Whoa, I did too much. Okay, let's evaluate what's going on right here. This looks pretty cool, honestly. It looks pretty cool. We gotta do the color on the duck in the front. I thought we could get away with the white duck, but we're not getting away with it right now. We're not getting away with it. So we gotta do the color on there. Let's come in here with the green. Someone mentioned the green-headed mallard duck. I'm just going to go for it. Cool. We're closing in on about the time that we probably want to start thinking about wrapping things up. So let's see. Might have to just come in and make some powerful decisions here. Nice. I'm really pleased with how that color turned out. I wanted to get some of the outside colors on the duck. So it's almost like he's like reflecting the colors. We can get some blue up here. Perfect. Literally perfect. That's the real strength of the watercolor. I should have been playing to this a lot more, but the real strength of the watercolor is when you start mixing colors that seem like they don't mix together and that they don't go together. That's where you start getting the interesting stuff. But I always forget that. And then you end up at the end, all the colors isolated. It's looking good. Oh yeah, we got to get in this ferret's little knee here. Let's see. Put that in there. It's a little green. Okay. So let's see. If we're thinking about how we want to close this bad boy up right now. Whoa, I did not mean to grab the camera. My bad. I meant to grab the light. Okay. So we're thinking about how we want to start closing this bad boy up right now. The question is really if we want to put in any small, tight areas of focus. Because everything right now, it's kind of big. It's not the same size, but it almost is. Let's see. No one suggested anything, so I'm going to just take the reins here a little bit. It's looking really good. There's a few little things that I'm noticing that I feel like we should address before we start feeling like it's wrapped up. This white, it's got to change. I made an executive call there. I thought it would be cool to bring the pink up from the bottom. And it is. That was a really cool decision. I'm just trying to figure out. It's like we're almost there, right? You can kind of feel it. Like we're not there. We're almost kind of there. Maybe this green needs to be darker. Maybe that's part of what I'm responding to. Let's see if that changes things up a little bit. We need a little something, but I just can't tell what at the moment. And if I can't figure it out, I'm just going to make a call. We really just need a little bit more focus, I guess. A little bit more high contrast. Something to like seal the deal, but I can't exactly tell what. I'm going to come in here with the green. I like this kind of nature, fallen, redemption kind of theme that we have going on. Maybe we'll think about how we can seal that. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Yeah. That's good. That was a good call. I could put eyes on the animals, I guess. I guess that's part of what I'm fighting right now. Let's try that. And this is wet, so I kind of want to get the fuzzy effect that I'm going to get right there. Yeah, that's pretty cool. What color for the ferret eye? I got away with the pink up here, but normally red eyes look kind of like aggressive and angry. That's not really what we want. So I'm going to come in with the cerulean here. I'm going to give this guy just a little. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. I'm just going to leave it. That looks really good. That looks tight too. That looks really tight. It's pretty cool, honestly. It's pretty cool. We're just not totally there. Man, come on. What is it going to be here? Small flower in the two spots above. Maybe put trees on little islands. Yeah, way in the back. I'm going to combine those two suggestions. Actually, okay, perfect. You guys together had the right answer. I know exactly what we need here. I'm going to combine both of your suggestions. Something on little islands in the front, that's a pretty good call. That's a good call. Small flower, you're in the right direction. What I think I'm going to do is put two kind of flowers on the water here, thus combining those two suggestions. I think that's what we need. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put two water lilies right here. That's going to be sick. That's what I'm making an executive call right here. What color? They kind of should be pink, but I don't really want to use pink. I'm going to try and use yellow. Oh, I know what color I'm going to use. I'm going to use raw sienna. So it's kind of like gold. We'll have these like gold white water lilies on the front. And that kind of fits the theme too in a weird way. Water lilies are just sort of like a nice pure part of nature. I think lilies kind of represent purity. I really use lilies. It's like the one real hangover from my days in Asian art. But the lotus is such a good symbol. The rose is really like the Western version of the lotus, but it doesn't quite capture what the lotus does because the lotus blooms in the water, and that's pretty cool. So really the water lily is like the Western version of the lotus, but we don't really use water lilies too much. I'm just going to make them fat. I don't want it to be too visually complicated here. So I'm going to make that fat, kind of water lily bud. Perfect. And we'll have it coming out just a few petals. Perfect. Perfect. And that's kind of like the nice part. We're going to throw in one more. And yeah, something about blooming in the water. I mean, that's really like a Buddhist art thing, but I couldn't really replace it with anything else. But the way they bloom on top of the water, they grow all the way up from the bottom of the water. And they just sit there, you know, waves come, they don't move. It's just perfect, really. And they're white. If you've ever seen one in real life, it has a really nice effect in real life because, this is perfect, by the way. This is exactly what we needed. Because ponds themselves, lakes and things like that, they're not dirty, but, you know, they have a little bit of that element, you know, like murkiness, I guess you could say. They have a little bit of like a murky element. And then you just see this, boom, like totally pure white flower. It's really like aggressively beautiful floating on the top. It really does have a really powerful effect in a way. It's I'm going to bring out some of this cerulean blue a little bit. Just a little bit. Perfect. Oh, almost like a little reflection. Great. Great. Perfect. Bring a little bit of the blue over here. Perfect. And I don't really want to address how the blue ends on the outside. And I'm going to throw down some water lilies, and we might be done. That really might be what we needed. Really might be what we needed. I'm not even going to paint in the water lilies intensely because the quality that we have going on here is really good. So I'm just going to kind of hint at them a little bit. It's like hint of water lilies, but not too much. And I actually like that little reflection. So I'm going to put a little bit of the green, like the duck's head is reflecting in the water. This is perfect. This is exactly what we needed. Perfect. Yeah. Great. And I don't know really how to grab that color. I don't really know what color that is even. I guess it's kind of brown a little bit. Just a little bit. Hint of it. Just a hint. Like the duck's reflecting in the water too. Maybe a little pink. Maybe the pink's reflecting in the water. This is a little dangerous, but just a little bit. Yeah, perfect. Full Bob Ross mode. Yeah, just a little nice reflection. A little happy reflection in the water. There we go. Now we're talking. Now we're talking right now. Might be done here. We might be done here. Let's see. The fade is contained between the trees. Maybe if you break the tree line, it'll pop a little bit more. Specifically, the peaks of the trees are vertically containing the lines. Yeah, that is a good idea, but I'm going to leave it unaddressed. I'm going to leave it how it is. I'm just worried about breaking the space on the outside. Maybe you mean up here, but I'm worried about breaking the space up too much on the outside. Although, honestly, that is a good suggestion. If we were taking it like all the way there, we might do that. Also talking about fishing is getting sushi. Nice, cool. No problem, man. He said he likes the stream. Thanks. I realize sometimes when I watch the stream, I've watched the stream back once or twice just to make sure it's all good. I realize sometimes when I'm reading chats, it sounds like I'm talking. So sometimes there's times where I'm like, wow, Owen, that's really cool. And someone watching probably thinks I'm just saying that. Okay, I think we are good here. I just let you into my brain a little bit. Sometimes they reach like a boom, that's the end, but sometimes they kind of finish themselves. I feel like we're kind of in like finishing itself territory because everything I'm thinking of, I think it was Picasso, he said, you know, you don't have a masterpiece when you can't add anything else. You have a masterpiece when you can't take anything else away. Not that we have a masterpiece here, but everything I'm thinking of adding, I'm like, I feel like it's going to be too much. Like I thought about putting something here in the apple, but I feel like it would be too much. Put something in here, it'd be like kind of too much. We have this nice sort of like dense halo and then the space, so I really feel like we're good, honestly. I'm just looking at it. I'm going to look at the screen too, so I'm seeing what you're seeing. I feel like it's pretty solid. I don't really think I could add anything. You know, I am thinking, we could get something behind this ferret here. Maybe just like, the thing is, this vertical stripe is really occupying that space. So I don't think I'm going to do it. I almost want to put like a really faint like cross behind, like almost like the cross is on the penguin's belly. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I feel like really faintly that would be cool, but I don't think I'm going to do it. I feel like we're in a good spot. Is there anything I want to put here? Yeah, no, we're good. We're good. I'm resisting. You know, you can also tell sometimes when you're doing art when you're resisting the obvious conclusion, and I'm resisting the reality that obviously we're done. Oh, the stone up here. That's what I'll do. That'll be the last thing we do. That's perfect. I'm going to put the stone up here just so it looks a little bit more like a ring, so I can say I did all I can. And I guess whatever color I drop in here, that's going to be kind of a definitive. I'm just going to throw in the blue up here. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. And what I'm going to do, because I don't want it to be too high contrast, taking up too much space, make it like kind of like a luminous gem. I'm just going to pick up the color a little bit. Yeah, that's perfect. I'm going to drop in a little bit of the shine up here. Perfect. Perfect. And I'm going to add a little bit of the blue over here. Perfect. Oh, yeah, there we go. There we go. That was it. That was it right there. I'll step back for a second. Cool. Cool. Okay, let's see. I'm going to look away for a second. You got to look away for a minute and then decide. So I'm going to look away for a second. Let's see. I think someone asked me a question. Gavin said, what do you think about historical criticism of the Bible? Is it useful or distracting? Especially New Testament, apostolic epistles, etc. That's an interesting question, man. I don't know. Well, the thing is that it's a really, really good question to ask me at the end. I was talking to someone recently. I asked a bunch of like theology questions on Twitter. Just 'cause sometimes I like putting my thoughts out there. That's kind of the whole thing I do, really. And I asked something about, I really want a good answer to this question too. Maybe I'll get it eventually. Maybe it's a divine mystery. But I asked, so like, what was Jesus exactly before the incarnation? Was he already like a physical human and then he became a physical human again? Or was he like his spirit body and then he became a physical human? Because I know that now he's a physical human, like in heaven, right? Like he ascended in his physical body, but did he always have a physical body before? Or maybe he was just like the pure Logos. Was he just like the Logos and then he took an incarnation in human form and now he's ascended as the incarnated Logos? And then doesn't that raise some interesting questions about like God changing? Because then before he was X and now he's Y. I was like, I really want an answer to that question, or I want to know if there's an answer to that question. And my point is that the way it's relevant to what you asked me is that someone DM'd me and they were like, yeah, I've been wondering about this. And they said, sometimes though I really feel like asking these questions just kind of like distracts me from everything. It's kind of like me just like wondering these superfluous things. So they were like, I feel kind of dangerous asking some of these questions. I'm kind of just going to stop thinking about it. That's not exactly what they said, but that's kind of what they said. So I feel like for some people, it really just varies like case to case, honestly. Like some people, if they looked up a historical thing, and let's just say hypothetically there was some historical thing, and someone was like, yeah, there's totally definitive proof that this 100% never happened. Let's just say, hypothetically. I don't think that exists, but let's just say it did. That would really like shake some people. Maybe they look up something and someone says, well, this probably didn't happen because I found this X, Y, and Z. So I think it depends person to person. For me, I'm the kind of person where I really can't not look at anything. So I have looked at some of that stuff, mostly for the Old Testament, not for the New Testament. But so I think it depends on the person. I mean, for some people, it's like, yeah, there's probably no reason to look at that. But for some people, it's probably good. I mean, I looked at a lot of that stuff for the Exodus. I looked up like historical evidence for the Exodus and Egyptian records and what Egyptian records say about Hebrew slaves and all that stuff. And that was really interesting for me. I could definitely see why some people might look into something like that and be like, wait, there's no record of X, Y, and Z. Like, oh my God. Or there is a record of, So I think it's different for person to person, honestly. I think it's different for person to person. It's a really non-committal, long answer. But I think it just depends on what the nature of your spirituality is. In a lot of older spiritual systems, they talk about different kinds of people. There's different kinds of people. Like in Buddhism, they talk about that. Some people are really devotional. They just want to have like a picture on the wall and like pray to it all the time. Some people are like really analytical. They want to read like a math equation basically about how it is. Some people are really, meditational. They want to just sit in the corner and like, go into their mind. And there's different kinds of people. And I think that's true just across the board in general. I think there's different like kinds of people. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Like a lot of times we want like a universal answer of like, oh, but it really just depends on your nature. That's my very amateur, non-committal answer to that question. Anyway, I think we kind of nailed it here. It's pretty interesting. You know what I always say at the end, if you've been here before, I always want to recap, but you've been here the whole time, so I don't need to recap. But I think we did kind of land interestingly on a little theme here of like nature in toto, nature as a whole. We got like birds and land animals and fish kind of shattered and juxtaposed in this weird way. And then, the fish is like split with this nail. It's an interesting like Christological thing going on over here. I'm sure we can unpack what a penguin would represent in like theological symbolism, but we're not going to do it. They live off in a really cold place by themselves, I guess. It's an emperor penguin, king, royalty, crown. Maybe he's wearing the ring like a crown, King Solomon. Maybe we're just Jungian stretching things here, but otherwise I think this looks pretty awesome. I think this looks really good, and this is a good example of something like, if I sketch this out, this is kind of like a painting sketch, I would call it. I could easily take this and port it over to like a finished image and say, oh yeah, this is a really cool piece right here. I'm going to use that for something. I actually might use that for something. The apple in the animal turning back, that's pretty cool. I'll use that for something. So it's one of the overarching themes of the show, but you really get ideas by working and combining things together. People always think the ideas come and then you do the work, but it's the opposite. By working, you get the ideas. And on that note, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to wrap it up right now. We're right on time, right around 8:30. Thanks for coming through to the painting show. Really enjoy having you guys here, hanging out with you guys here, especially for this one where I'm like talking to you guys via the show. Culture Critique said, I miss Twitter for accounts like Owen. If that's the case, thanks by the way. Follow me on Telegram. I'm on Telegram. Little plug. I never do plug at the end. I'm on Instagram too. I'm trying to get Instagram going. So if you want to follow me there and like pressure me into posting more, that's cool. Or you can just follow me and like not pressure me or anything. Patreon's going well if you want to hop on there. What else can I shill right now? That's it really. Shirts and stuff, but I'm dropping more stuff there. Working on the book. So exciting things coming out of the studio. Kind of a crunch time, but it's a good time. And thanks for being here. So that's it. Wrapping it up. And I will catch you guys on the internet where we all hang out together. Please enjoy the rest